Welcome to the First Things First podcast. And first things first, we need you to subscribe and leave comments, letting us know what you think of the show. We're listening. I'm Nick Wright, joined by two of my favorite people, Jenna Wolfe, Cris Carter. Now, let's get the show started.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That is the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. That guy right there still getting dressed is Nick Wright. And guys, what an unbelievably exciting weekend we had this past weekend.
And it is no better way for us to have our 100th show than for it to be our first show where we know who's playing in the Super Bowl officially.
Yes.
The two number one seeds.
Yeah, we had a good night. We went to the game in Philadelphia, got back in time, so looking forward to a big-time show.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What a game that was.
And 100 shows. We glossed over it. That's amazing. We made it.
And definitely the people of Philadelphia are definitely in the top 100 people I've ever met before in my life.
Oh, my God. Well, speak for yourself.
Like 100 best people,
I mean,
100
something.
most excited people,
Most interesting.
most
Let's go
colorful, interesting.
Yeah. And they must be watching the show, given the reception of yours truly, but we can wait on that one as I sip my coffee.
All right, let's start in the AFC, though. At some point in the fourth quarter of this game, with the Patriots trailing 20-10 in a game where they had lost Rob Gronkowski, where Tom Brady was playing with 10 stitches in his throwing hand, and with the Jaguars playing great football, there was a Patriot fan, we'll call her Steph Gosk, who mumbled to herself quietly, "No problem." And she was right. Patriots behind Tom Brady pulling off another comeback win, beating the Jaguars 24-20. That's the most excited I've literally ever seen Bill Belichick. 24-20 to head to their third Super Bowl in 4 years. Number 8 for Brady. The last 4 times the Pats have trailed by double digits in a playoff game, they came back and won. Here is Tom Brady.
I mean, it's never really over until it's over with this team. So, you know, I was proud of the way we fought. It's a mentally tough team, and we need a lot of mental toughness today, and we found a way to dig deep and get it done. I mean, this was a little injury at the end of the day. It's certainly a big part of what a quarterback does. I mean, I've had a lot worse injuries than this, but if this was on my left hand, I could care less, but it's based on where it was, and, you know, we had to deal with it.
I mean, look, Tom did a great job, and he's a tough guy. We all know that, all right? But I'm not talking about open heart surgery here.
All right, so for Tom Brady, this was his 54th career comeback win when they're trailing in the fourth quarter or tied in the fourth quarter. 11 in the playoffs. That's an outstanding number for him. So you see, how are the Patriots just always able to come back in games like this?
Well, it's a perfect combination. It is the most disciplined, the best situational coach that we've seen in football. And it's not fair to compare Belichick to Lombardi and some other people that people aren't familiar with. But in the modern coaching era, he is the absolute best at every game situation, in-game situation. And then he also, the last 17 years, has been partnered with the greatest quarterback that we've ever seen, who is – Tom is great, but Tom can also be a game manager. That's what he had to do yesterday. He had to manage his pain, be able to manage his emotions, manage the emotion of the defense going against the Jacksonville team that early they needed Tom to be at the best of his game. So it's a perfect marriage, Belichick and Brady. That's how they're able to do it because they get everything else buttoned up. They're going to be better in close situations. They're going to be better in 4 minutes. They're going to be better going into halftime. They're going to be better after halftime making adjustments. And that's what we've been able to see with all this success. Typically in New England, you can't name it. We always say Tom Brady and Belichick. But in the big games, they always have 4 or 5 guys who are not the stars.
Right.
They're just supporting roles. They always come through. I'm talking about from back in the day. It was either Ty Law making an interception, Vrabel coming up with the sack, Teddy Bruschi, he reads the coverage and picks off a pass, Willie McGinnis.
Gerard Mayo made big plays.
I mean, this is how they do things. Belichick and Brady set the table, but these other ancillary players realize in these big games, they come up with plays. Stephon Gilmore coming over from Buffalo, signed him to a big-time contract. He gets the knockaway on 4th down. So there's not one thing, but the way they go about business leads to them being better at critical situations, Nick, than other teams in the NFL.
The Stephon Gilmore point's a great one. I mean, that was their big free agent signing.
20 weeks ago, they wish they could send him back to Buffalo.
And he seals the game to send them to the Super Bowl. I mean, you were mentioning guys. Dante Hightower made 2 different game-saving plays in the last 2 Super Bowls. Like, he's a good player, but he's not the Brady, Belichick. But on Brady and Belichick, everyone's going to focus on the end of the game, and I will as well in a moment. But how about the end of the first half, where the Patriots kill you every time? We hadn't yet left for the Eagle game. And I'm sitting with you watching this, and I say, man, I was calculating. How many first downs do the Jags need? Not to add points when it was 14-3.
Right.
Just to make sure New England doesn't get the ball back. Because what they were better than everyone in the league again this year is points in the final 2 minutes of the first half. They get a touchdown. Now, conversely, what did the Jags do then? They get the ball back, and they're shook from that. They're maybe happy to be up 4. They take a knee with 55 seconds left. How rare is that, CC?
It's very rare.
Well, it hadn't happened in the NFL all year. That was 0 times all year did a team take a knee with more than 50 seconds left in the first half. But that's the end of the half. So the Jags maybe could have added 3. The Patriots did add 7. And then the end of the game, where success begets success, where confidence begets confidence. Can we just show America what the Pats have done in their last 3 biggest games, the last 2 Super Bowls, and yesterday's game in the fourth quarter? They trailed by double digits in the fourth quarter of each of those games. How about you win those fourth quarters 53-3?
Yeah, and no one will ever talk about the defense.
No, right.
Give up a field goal.
Give up a field goal. The only points they've given up in the fourth quarter overtime of the last 2 Super Bowls and yesterday was the field goal the Jags kicked to start the fourth quarter for yards that were given up pre-fourth quarter. Some context on how rare that is. All right, in the last 10 years, the entire NFL, when trailing by double digits in the fourth quarter in the playoffs, is 3-70. The Patriots are 3-4. Like, in NFL playoff history, the record for most fourth quarter double-digit comebacks was the Dallas Cowboys with 2. The Pats have 3 in the last 4 seasons. So I thought age was going to catch up to Tom Brady. I came into this year believing both these were true. He's the greatest quarterback ever, and also he's a 40-year-old quarterback, and it's not going to be sustainable late into the season. Well, you look at how he played last week. You look at what he did in the fourth quarter yesterday. The guy's as good, in the critical moments, as good as he's ever been.
And the Patriots don't have to come out, and this is what we're seeing as Tom Brady's getting older and as the Patriots are getting more accustomed to learning how to win games as opposed to how to just play games. They don't need to come out and dominate for 60 minutes. They need to dominate when it's time for them to dominate.
Right. They don't have dominant personnel either. Like they don't have that ability. Not unless they're facing one of the lesser talented teams. They're not going to overwhelm you as you start the game. Yes.
You're right. And let's talk about what they had. They had a quarterback whose throwing hand was injured, and we didn't really know how bad it was. Their number 1 guy, Rob Gronkowski, was rendered, useless, basically. He never came back after he was thrown out of the game. And they were trailing in the fourth quarter. They had all of this stuff working against them, but because they don't have to dominate, they said, okay, well, let's just, and you mentioned the CC, which was so important. What they're so good at is keeping their emotions in check, knowing what they have to do, not playing ahead of the play that's right in front of them, not figuring out how many points they need to win, just figuring out how to get the next series of points. And you watch them methodically come back, calmly, focused, and they came out with a win.
Yeah, when they were down 20-14, I told Nick, we were in the car, we're watching it. They're going to win 24-20. He's like, what? I said, yeah, they're going to score 2 more touchdowns and be able to win the game. But I think that their ability, because we watched the first game of the season, Nick's Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, this defense is not fast. It's not big. It's not good. The coverage is probably the best part. That's their secondary is probably the best part of this defense. But their ability collectively to be able to shut people down in third down situations, in fourth quarter situations, that we won't ever give defense and Belichick enough credit because this is not great personnel. One of the best players on New England's defense is a 39-year-old that they got off of the side of the road that Pittsburgh
James
cut.
Harrison made 2 huge plays. 2 huge plays. Why did they sign James Harrison? Not to play, just because he's going to have some intel on a Steelers team they never ended up playing again.
Stop. Belichick, don't waste my time. Like he wouldn't. He's too smart for petty stuff like that. He knows the guy can play. He's an upgrade from a guy that's playing the position. Now let's go get him. I don't care what team he played for.
All right. And so you mentioned that people don't give the defense enough credit and the scheme. And you're right. I'm gonna though once again focus on the other side of the ball for just a moment. You've said about Brady that when you talked to him before the year about retirement, he said, why would I stop taking the test when I have all the answers to the test? He's seen everything, and now he knows what people are going to do. That is exacerbated and put on an extreme level in the fourth quarter of these games. It's like sometimes in these games, it's a pop quiz, to use the test analogy. Wasn't quite prepared for it in the beginning. But by the fourth quarter, and you've seen what the defense has done, he's solved it. In the fourth quarter of these spots, CC, those 3 games I mentioned, he's got 5 touchdowns, no picks, a 140 quarterback rating, and 500 yards against really good defenses.
Yes, and I would say that Tom Brady has never faced pressure like he faced going into yesterday's game.
Why?
Being injured on Wednesday, handing off to Rex Burkhead, gets 10 stitches on the inside of his hand. Now, it didn't affect his ability to throw the ball, but the shockwaves that it sent through New England, because you know what happened? There was a power struggle this year in New England, and Tom Brady won. But the only way he could prove out to win was by getting New England to the Super Bowl and winning them the Super Bowl. Jimmy Garoppolo, they needed him in practice Thursday and Friday, because even if Tom knew that Jimmy was there, he would have felt a lot better. Now, Tom wouldn't have let him play, but had this not worked out, had the cut on his hand affected New England and they had lost the game, we would be looking at Tom Brady and the power struggle between him, Mr. Kraft, and Belichick to be like, wow, I wonder if that affected the team. So for me, Tom had more pressure on him in this situation. If he forced Garoppolo out and then he would have missed time with an injury, man, Tom came through in the biggest situation, and seems like he won the power struggle. Look like we're going to be seeing him play in New England for a few more years.
If the Patriots were worried about Tom Brady's hand, we certainly didn't know about it. Look, this thing was either a paper cut or an amputation. That is how few details the team let out about his injury. Turned out he got about 10 stitches on his throwing hand, and it limited him 0% in the win over the Jaguars. He threw for 290 yards, 2 touchdowns, fourth quarter comeback. He now heads to his 8th Super Bowl, and oh, by the way, he turns 41 in August. Here he is after the game.
You know, you cherish these moments and opportunities, and I know we've had quite a few of them, which we've been very blessed to do, and it's just been an unbelievable run. And I think everyone should be really proud of what we accomplished. This is a different team than last year's team, and, you know, it didn't look good at 2-2, and, you know, you just keep showing up to work every day, and we sit in these chairs, and Coach Belichick gets up here, and he demands a lot out of us, and he tries to get the most out of us every day, and it's not always great. You know, sometimes it's pretty average, and then, you know, you're just trying to get better and better and get to the point where you can make, you know, the fourth quarter of a game and, you know, try to play well enough to get yourself into the next one. So just proud of our team, proud of what we accomplished. It's pretty amazing. And proud of this team, you know, great leadership, and it's just been a great year.
Tom Brady has the ability to answer everyone's question without them answering it in one answer. He literally answered 15 questions that were not answered in that one answer right there. Cris, how remarkable is this for Tom Brady?
It's unbelievable. I mean, for a franchise that has the most Super Bowl appearances, and then Brady and Belichick going to their 8th Super Bowl, I think that speaks for itself. But just when you watched that second half comeback win for Tom Brady and the New England Patriots, one of the things that stood out to me was just the synergy between what Bill Belichick wants to do with his scheme and how Tom Brady goes out and executes it. When you saw the wheel route pass to Danny Amendola, when you saw the touchdown pass to Danny Amendola in the back of the end zone, the accuracy that it takes to put that football only in a place where Amendola has a shot at making a play on the ball, to me, that's what makes Tom Brady special. That's what separates him from the rest of the quarterbacks. In those critical moments, he's able to make those plays, convert those plays, the 3rd and 18 to Chris Hogan. He's able to make those plays when other quarterbacks don't make those plays. That's the difference.
The difference is, I'm sorry, the accuracy or the fact that he does it without getting ahead of himself and just being very level-headed about it?
Well, the attention to detail and then that accuracy and being able to execute in that moment. It all comes down to execution for the Patriots. And so when you start looking at this team and really breaking it down, more teams fold in those situations because they find ways to lose games. The Patriots don't beat themselves. And so when they're in those situations, they understand what's required. They understand what Tom Brady wants.
Right.
And he's able to put the ball in a position where they can make a play on it and the defense can't. And that's the difference in this team.
And even before, people need to remember that prior to 2007, statistically speaking, Brady was good, but was not an amazing all-time guy. The reason he was considered prior to 07 already going to be a Hall of Famer was because even early in his career, late in games and big spots, dating back to the first Super Bowl against the Rams, when John Madden, one of the greats of all time, was saying, I think you got to take a knee here and go to overtime.
Yep.
They trusted Tom Brady.
Also, the offensive coordinator told Tom Brady not to lose the game.
Right. And
Drew Bledsoe, who was honorary captain for them last night, told him, don't listen to him. Go out there and win
Go
it, Tom.
win the game,
Yes.
and this has been who he is. Tom Brady has as many double-digit fourth-quarter comebacks in the playoffs in the last 4 years as the entire rest of the NFL has in the last 10 years. And they were in one Super Bowl, another Super Bowl, and then an AFC Championship game. This is where Brady is right now. Prior to last season, he was the greatest quarterback in the history of football. Since then, he has won a Super Bowl with a 25-point comeback, gotten to another one. He has now been to a Super Bowl in nearly half of the years he's been a full-time starter. In fact, it has been. He's been a full-time starter for 16 years because one of those years he blew out his knee on the first game of the season. He's been to 8 Super Bowls. There is no hyperbole with this guy. And he does it in the biggest spots. He was just okay through 3 quarters, CC. No touchdowns, 150 yards, 87 quarterback rating.
Right.
Then what did he do in the fourth quarter? Played a perfect football game.
In my 50 years of living on this earth, Tom Brady is the phenomenon that sets itself apart from anything I've witnessed. And I've been at the Masters with Tiger Woods. I'm a huge fan of Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods was on his way to do the most incredible thing that we had saw athletically the last 50 years. Michael Jordan. I traveled with the Bulls. That was the most phenomenal thing that I've seen until I witnessed Tom Brady. I was in Atlantic City when Mike Tyson was knocking people out every month. All comers, I'll fight you anywhere. All these things. The difference with Brady is it's not physical skill. He's not overwhelming. He's not Michael Jordan. He's not hanging in the air. He's not Tiger Woods, the best athlete that ever played golf. He's not Mike Tyson, the most ferocious guy that's ever been heavyweight champ. He's Tom Brady. He's a good-looking guy. And the trick to it, Nick, in the last 10 years, he's gotten better at his fundamentals. Tom has never had a big arm, but he's even gotten more and more accurate as he's gone along. You don't have to be. Michael Jordan wasn't great all the time, but in the critical moments, Tom Brady has been better than any other athlete. And what I tell you, Nick, the difference between the good players and the great players, how long can they stay in their prime? And now we're talking about a guy that turns 41 in August who is still the best quarterback in the National Football League. And it's not about size, power, and speed. It's about his brain. It's about his whole approach. And I tore my thumb, all right? I had 15 stitches across my thumb. It wasn't when I was 40. It was when I was stupid and 20 and jumping out of a college dormitory window, all right? All the wrong reasons. But the pain I was in, and to have Tom Brady play a football game like he played, where he is holding the Patriots in their fate in his own hand, in his thumb, that was phenomenal. You don't go to the practice field an hour and a half and start throwing when you've been to 7 Super Bowls. It lets you know how Tom was concerned about his hand. So the ability to be able to do this on the level he's been able to do it and be consistent at it, I'm a fan of greatness. That's why I'm a fan of Tom Brady and what they're doing in New England.
I think you put it perfectly, CC. His competitive greatness in the National Football League is
Say
unmatched.
that again, and what is that?
His competitive greatness is unmatched in the National Football League. Competitive greatness is being at your best when your best is needed. And that's exactly what he was in that fourth quarter of the game. Yesterday, that's what he was in the second half of that game in the Super Bowl. When you see those types of performances, when you see the attention to detail, the focus and the execution, and it goes back to what you said, CC, doing the fundamentals better than anybody else on the field, that's what makes Tom Brady special. He's willing to do that, and he understands what he needs to do in preparation to be able to do that week in, week out. So his level of consistency and then rising to the challenge in those moments, That's what makes him the greatest quarterback of all time.
He has to do that because he's not going to compete athletically with other quarterbacks in the league. He's not going to compete strength-wise, height-wise, mobility-wise.
Right. And he plays a position where it's not that important.
It's not that important because if you're going to win at the highest level in this league, your quarterback has to be able to make plays from the pocket.
Correct, but I think where other athletes that are getting a little older in age say, all right, well, my skills are kind of lessening a little bit. I already know how to play the game. Tom Brady shows up early every day. Tom Brady still studies. Tom Brady
He's
still...
obsessed with this.
He loves it. He loves getting better.
It is, and you saw if you were at least the stream, I was watching online, and so because we were in the car on the way to the game, but I think over the air as well, you saw these commercials for that documentary series he's doing. He talks about, like, you're going to have to sacrifice. You're going to have to sacrifice time with your family, this, that, because he's chasing something. I know how much you love, CC, these blind reveals. I want to show America 2 Hall of Famers. Can we show this? Here are 2 Hall of Fame resumes. Left-hand side, 197 touchdowns, 93 ratings, 3 Super Bowl wins, 1 loss. Right-hand side, 291 touchdowns, a 101 rating, 2 Super Bowl wins, 1 loss. Show America who these 2 people are, if we could. That's Brady pre-ACL and post-ACL. Either one of those on its own make the Hall of Fame. And by the way, the one on the right doesn't even include this year's Super Bowl he just got into because we don't know if they're going to win or lose it. There are 2 players in the history of football that I believe it's true you could take just half their career and they get one of your gold jackets. Jerry Rice and Tom Brady. It is as remarkable of a sustained run of excellence as we've ever seen in sports.
And I think that if you're a young person, I want you to go back and look at Tom Brady's 40-yard dash at the Combine. And I want you to look at his body. And I want you to see the way he played football yesterday and to let you know that if you train mentally and physically, as you get older, you can get better. And your physical limitations won't limit your ability to be able to dream and to be able to execute. Because Tom Brady, when he gets in the pocket, you don't have to be 6'7". You don't have to run a 4.40. But he's able to do it in the most pressure-packed situation. And that, I know, Chris, you and I are the only 2 people can understand that. You will never find me disrespecting Tom Brady because how he's able to do this. I made 8 Pro Bowls. This dude made 8 Super Bowls. I mean, it's amazing. It's truly amazing. Much respect.
We love the fact that he works out this hard in his 40s. Anyone that works out this hard in their 40s. Hallelujah. And if he could put it on his Instagram account, he probably would.
Before you go on, I just want to say one thing. This is our 100th show. When we started this show, there were a few people we didn't know about that we didn't know were going to be regular guests. Chris Canty's one of those people. You have been such a great addition to the show. Thank you so much.
Thank
you really
you
helped
so
these
much,
first 100 shows. Thank you, bro.
If you want to see 200, you better step it up.
First things first, and back to the AFC Championship game. The Patriots beat the Jags 24-20. Jacksonville was flagged for nearly 100 penalty yards, including 2 big pass interference calls. On the other hand, New England flagged once for 10 yards. Seems like a big discrepancy. Jags cornerback A.J. Bouye made his thoughts on the officiating clear. Take a listen.
I was pissed because I seen Amendola headbutt the hell out of Gip in front of the ref. Y'all don't call nothing, then he pushed him after, but y'all waiting for Gip to push. Like, it don't make no sense, man. It's a lot of stuff that don't make no sense, but that's why I said I got a lot of respect for these people in the locker room. They kept fighting. We all kept fighting. We knew there was stuff we couldn't control, and we kept it close. So.
All right, Nick, is Jacksonville right to be frustrated with the disparity in penalties in this game?
Of course they're right to be frustrated with the disparity in penalties. Let me preface this with saying New England, once again, made their own luck to a degree. They were great before the end of the first half. They were remarkable in the fourth quarter. They deserve to be where they're at. I get it. They were the best team in the AFC record-wise this year, and then they proved it out in the playoffs. But I just want to let people know how rare what we saw yesterday is, okay? New England had benefited from 88 more penalty yards than Jacksonville, an 88 penalty yard discrepancy. That happens less than 1% of the time in NFL games. New England had 1 total penalty, a special teams penalty. The last time in a playoff game a team only had 1 penalty was in 2011, and it was the New England Patriots. In the last 10 years, in regular season or playoffs to have 10 yards or less in penalties. The record for most times it happened in a season was 4 times by the 2008 New England Patriots. This year, the Patriots have had it happen 5 times since week 10. So they had, I'm sure some of that's coaching, some of that's preparation, and some of that is what we would call in the NBA a superstar call, which is the Patriots continually and consistently get the benefit of the doubt on all these things, and that is without even mentioning the single biggest call of the game, which was Miles Jack forces a fumble. Appears to me by the time he has possession, no one is touching him, gets up, is going to run for the game-winning score. That is to go up 17 in the 4th quarter, and it is blown dead. So as great as New England was late in the game, if that play is officiated properly, the Pats lose. And so I give Brady credit. He's the greatest player I've ever seen. I give New England credit. But, yeah, I'd be mad about the officiating as well.
Did you see that Miles Jack play the same way, Cece?
The Miles Jack play, I believe, would have been called down by contact. I believe that that's typically, when it's called that way, he would have been called down because he came in contact with the running back. Even though the running back didn't try to touch him, they made body contact on the ground together, I think, when Miles Jack had possession of the ball. I'm not worried, but this is also the same argument that I've been hearing about New England the last 15 years. Let's do this. New England's been investigated and penalized through draft picks, fines by the NFL. Do we think that the NFL would do something to help out New England? Of course not. So what is it then? One team in a playoff scenario, it's an all-star crew that's refereeing the game. So they call less penalties anyway, all right? New England is better coached than everyone every week, every year. It's an ongoing cycle. What are one of the excuses when New England wins? Oh, we got beat by the referees. I'm so sick and tired of people saying I got beat by the referee. We sound like some little league team. You know something, man? We got homered by the refs. Well, it's football at its highest level. And the Patriots are being rewarded because they have more discipline. Most of these penalties by Jacksonville were just 2 penalties. All right? Personal foul, all right? Targeting. And the pass interference, which was obviously pass interference.
The second pass interference was obviously pass interference. The one on Jalen Ramsey. The first one on A.J. Bouye, to me, it looked like perfect coverage.
It's not perfect coverage, Nick. When you put your right hand on a guy 30 yards down the field, and Brandon Cooks went out of bounds. When he goes out of bounds, you know what the referee calls? The advantage went to the defender. Watch his right arm right here. You see that right there? You cannot put your right arm on a guy when your left arm is on his back. It's out of the chuck zone. You can run with him and tap his arm, but you can't make him, force him out.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, this is something that I know.
No, I wasn't.
When
Absolutely.
both players are running down the sideline and the offensive player goes out of bounds, okay, and the ref is right there 5 yards in front of him, watch his right arm. He gained an advantage when his right arm went on him. That's what made him go out of bounds. He had to call it.
Cece. So the fact that the Pats are more prepared, I agree with you. And the idea, I want to make this clear. I'm not alleging some league-wide conspiracy because, first of all, those don't exist in pro sports. Second of all, you're right that New England's, if anyone wants to argue a conspiracy, the league has had it out for New England over the last 15 years. I don't think either of those things is true. So I don't think the refs are getting a call. Make sure these calls go for the Patriots. I do think there is, in every walk of life, sports or not sports, implicit biases. And when one team has had a sustained run of excellence, when you know somewhere in your subconscious, this is a Bill Belichick coach team, this is a Tom Brady quarterback team, I think they get the benefit of the doubt consistently. Again, I know that there was 2 big pass interference penalties. I also know that a team winning the penalty battle, if you will, by over 88 yards happens less than 1% of the time. I know that the Patriots are well coached. Yet somehow there's other well-coached teams. Yet in the last 7 years in the playoffs, twice a team's been called for 1 penalty or less. Both times it was the New England Patriots. Like, I can't disregard that and just think they are that much better coached. They are that much better prepared. And we saw the Miles Jack thing
No, you don't have to listen to me. I've been telling you that. They're that much better. They're that much more prepared. They're not that much athletic. They don't have better personnel. But the X's and O's and what to do in the game, they are better prepared to react under pressure than any other team. I'm just not going to let it fly that, oh, they got some type of advantage with the referee. You know what advantage they do have? Do you ever see a player with New England extend the ball at the goal line?
No.
Oh, you know the reason why? Because you'll be benched. It's actually coached. All right? You don't see them fumble the ball. You don't see them have the ball away from their body when they're running. No, it's tucked in. Why? Because he will put you on the bench. The small things are more important in New England than any other place, and it plays out in the football game.
Which is why it's so frustrating, though, because you're right, they don't fumble. They don't extend the ball at the goal line.
Why is it frustrating for you?
Let me tell you what's frustrating. Let me just finish, please. That when a guy makes an amazing play like Myles Jack did, that James White didn't do anything wrong there. I don't think that was just Myles Jack making a remarkable football play. We don't get to see it play out. Like you're saying you think it was down by contact. I've watched this multiple times. It felt to me like the ball is laying on him when they're in contact. And by the time Myles Jack has possession, that James White's rolled. Dion Lewis. Pardon me. By the time by the time Myles Jack has possession, Dion Lewis has rolled the other way, and that would have been the game. That's no penalty. That's up 17 points in the fourth quarter. That's game over. And that one we don't get to see play out.
Isn't that something we've been seeing this whole season, that they've been blowing the whistle a little early? And secondly, is there something to be said for the fact that maybe the Patriots earned the right to be able to be taking those calls, especially if it can go both ways?
No. There is no earned right for disparity.
Okay.
Right? We want the games called out.
No benefit of the doubts.
What benefit from what?
I'm saying if it could go either way.
But they
don't call something.
I don't think that I don't believe that, and I also think what we've seen this year is the opposite of what you described. I don't think we've seen this year referees blowing plays dead early. I think we've seen this year them go the other way, which is if there's any question if a guy was down or not, let it go, and then we'll review it after. That's not what they did in the Jags game. The Jags had plenty of opportunities to win this game. The Patriots made great plays. I compared the Amendola's catch to the Dwight Clark catch earlier. So I think they made amazing plays.
Do you think the guy with the play clock, he made them get a delay when they're sitting there in the huddle too long? Whose fault was it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. Cece, I'm not saying all of it, and I'm not saying it's a grand conspiracy. And I mentioned
it's very grade school-ish. When I'm at a little league game, I hear parents yelling, "The referees got it out for us." The business is too big for that. They play the game better than other people, and it's being credited by them going to their 8th Super Bowl. The small things are more important in New England than the other 31 teams. When will we learn that?
All right, moving on to 4 words I never thought I'd say on this show or any show or at home or in the car or anywhere. Nick Foles was outstanding. Vikings and Eagles, but really just Eagles last night. They were dominant after taking over for Carson Wentz. Nick Foles wasn't exactly a big threat until last night, where he threw for over 350 yards and 3 touchdowns in a 38-7 Eagles rout. Case Keenum returned to earth, throwing for 271 yards and 2 picks. But the Philadelphia Eagles are going to the Super Bowl. Here is Nick Foles after the game.
I'm grateful and humbled to be a part of this team. To be in this moment, to share it with our family, our fans, all the people that love the Philadelphia Eagles, this franchise, my teammates. It is honestly unbelievable, and words just can't describe.
The thing is about this team is, all the adversity and the negativity or whatever that surrounds the team. These guys don't listen to that, and I don't listen to that, and they come to work and practice hard every day, and they love being around each other.
They're all hard to swallow when you don't win, and to get a game away from the playing the Super Bowl, that's going to be hard to swallow. The way it happened, they played really well and we didn't. And it's unfortunate.
All right, CC, minus the glasses, Nick Foles was tremendous. Maybe he was just reading too much of the defense. I don't know if that's what.
Whatever he did, whatever he ate before the game, he needs to continue that same look, everything.
Was it him? How were the Eagles able to dominate the Vikings yesterday?
You have to give Nick Foles a lot of credit, but when you're in a game like this, you can't even start dishing out credit until you give credit to the Philadelphia fans. That stadium, it was amazing. It was electric. I mean, it was rocking. And this game, I guess early, it could have went any way. Vikings drive straight down, score.
Right away.
Philadelphia does nothing.
Yep.
Vikings get the ball back. Case Keenum turns into Case Keenum, throws a pick six. And from there on, I mean, it was over with. So that crowd and the players, the aggressive play calling, I mean, right before halftime, it's 30 seconds. They're going against the #1 defense. They decide to drive down the field.
Up
and they
14.
They get points before halftime. Jacksonville had almost twice as much time on the clock. They took a knee. Philadelphia decides we're going to drive, and they go and get some points out of it. So you can't just Nick Foles, yes. The head coach, yes. Frank Wright, the offense coordinator, yes. The defensive line, they had 5 defensive linemen with 6 pressures.
Man.
So they destroyed the Vikings offensive line, which, going back to Friday, that was my big point going into the game. So at all levels, Philadelphia was dominant over the Vikings.
All right, you mentioned the crowd. I grew up in Kansas City going to Chiefs games, going to Chiefs home playoff games. Now, they lost all of those games, so that's neither here nor there. They weren't blown out in all of them, so it was loud. It was loud environment.
I mean, Philadelphia's not used to winning either.
No, but the only reason I even said that is I have been to intense, loud, outdoor playoff games in what is considered the loudest stadium in the country, Arrowhead Stadium. That was the loudest football game outdoors I've ever been at. And I say this to Philadelphia fans, not because the section in front of us started a Nick Wright sucks chant, not because there were some threats. I say this because
that's true.
I owe it to the people that weren't sitting in front of me. Man, there are few things in my sports life I've been more wrong about than I've been about these Eagles all year. When they were 7-1, I said 7-1 can quickly turn into 11-5.
Right.
I said when Wentz went down, I said
if he is the MVP, how can
they got
you lose
no
the
shot.
MVP and be that good?
I said going into the playoffs, every single team that made the bracket in the NFC has a better chance than Philadelphia Eagles. And they responded by escaping against Atlanta, and then the most dominant playoff game, one of the most dominant playoff games we've seen in the last half dozen years by any team in the playoffs. What they did yesterday against an outstanding Vikings team. And CC, you mentioned it, and I hate to do this to what's been such a great story, but it wasn't just the Case pick six that ended it.
No.
It was the Case fumble. Let me set the scene. It's 14-7. The Vikings have the ball on the Philly 16. It's going to be either 14-10 or 14-14. And the Case fumble that was recovered, I believe, by our good friend Howie Long's son, Cris, who's going to be in his 2nd straight Super Bowl, by the way. Shout out to him.
After never making the playoffs.
After never making the playoffs. You're absolutely right. In St. Louis forever. And then how did Philly respond after that Case fumble? How about this? They got a 3rd and 10 from midfield. You know the last time Philadelphia converted a 3rd and 10 or longer? Carson Wentz was the quarterback. And what do? 53-yard to Alshon Jeffrey. That made it 21-7, and it felt like that didn't end the game, but it put the Vikings in a position where if Philly didn't make a huge mistake, they were going to win that football game. Philly was outstanding, and I totally misjudged them this year.
Go ahead, CC.
The one thing that I think that should be recognized, too, is when I left U.S. Bank Stadium a week Sunday night after the Minneapolis Miracle, when we came to the stadium, we came through the back. We come right by the Vikings locker room. There were some players outside the locker room, talked to some staff. And then going on the field for the coin toss and everything, I didn't feel the same energy from the Vikings team. So for me, you have to admit the tremendous high they were on 7 days ago, that they weren't able to match that. It was kind of like they were still walking in a daze or in a fog that we saw the unbelievable shots like right after the game. Everson Griffin, to me, is the person in the face that I kept remembering, just him being shocked about them winning. And when I got on the field, I didn't feel the juice. I didn't feel the swagger that I had felt with Minnesota Vikings and Mike Zimmer coach football team. So, yes, it was a miracle that they were able to beat New Orleans, but to be able to recover from that, and we knew that it would be a huge obstacle to be able to overcome. Mike Zimmer talked about Wednesday. They didn't have a good practice. So for me, I didn't say anything, but I did hear them. And I think it played out that way, that they couldn't reach the emotion that they had reached 7 days ago last night.
The Eagles were underdogs again in this one and used that chip on their shoulder as motivation. Nick Foles versus the stingiest scoring defense in the NFL, and Nick Foles won, finishing 26 of 33, 352 yards with 3 scores and 0 picks. Cris Candy, how did Nick Foles shred the Vikings' top-ranked defense yesterday?
Because their head coach, Doug Peterson, is a fan of the show, and he listened to what I had to say last week.
That's the obvious answer. Obviously.
They got the ball out of his hands quickly, and that's why Nick Foles was able to have that production. The Minnesota Vikings defense wasn't able to take away that first read, and as a result, Nick Foles was 26 of 33 for 352 yards and 3 touchdowns. But when you look a little closer at how this game played out, I think the Eagles' defense dictated the complexion of the game. What I mean by that is they didn't look great on the first drive. The Minnesota Vikings, Case Keenum, came out on a 9-play, 75-yard drive that ended in a Kyle Rudolph touchdown. But after that Eagles defense settled down a little bit, they were able to come back and create opportunities for their offense, being able to get the pick 6. Chris Long disrupting Case Keenum when he tried to throw to Thielen. Pat Robinson with the 50-yard return. Yeah. Okay, and then a couple of series later in that first half, Derek Barnett being able to get the sack fumble on Case Keenum when they were going down to try to tie the game. That's a big play right there on the fringe of the red zone. And then the offense being able to convert for a touchdown. So the game could have been 14-14. Instead, ends up being 21-7, and the Eagles be able to take that commanding lead. It's complementary football is what it comes down to. All 3 phases of the game playing in a fashion that complements one another, and they were able to dictate the terms of that game by being able to get out to that lead. And I think once they got out to that lead, that was the difference. It was too much for the Minnesota Vikings to overcome.
Well, how'd they get off to that lead? One thing that Frank Wright, offensive coordinator, and Doug Peterson did, they got Nick Foles in a lot of run-pass options. Well, the quarterback didn't have the option to run, but they had a lot of play action to start the game, which froze the Vikings defense, and they ran several slants or smash routes to be able to get some rhythm into the offense. Zach Ertz had a tremendous first half of the game. Tremendous big play right there before halftime. So they had all the answers, especially on third down. Now, Nick talked about last week this Vikings defense being the best in the NFL on third down and being the best in the NFL the last 15 years. So this defense was shocked that the Eagles were able to continue to keep converting. And then the aggressive downfield play calling, I believe, with the play action, that's how they got off to this fast start.
The downfield play calling was remarkable, given the fact, going into yesterday's game, Nick Foles this year had thrown 12 passes that traveled at least 20 yards in the air. He was 1 for 12 with 0 touchdowns and an interception on those 12. Yesterday, he threw 5. 3 for 5, 2 touchdowns, no picks. 2 of those 2 touchdowns were the 2 game-breaking plays. You mentioned the Vikings' third down defense being shredded. It was the Vikings in this game. Most points they allowed this season, most yards they allowed this season, most passing yards, most first downs, highest third down conversion, most third downs allowed, highest passer rating. It was the worst game that this defense has had all season, the worst game this defense has had under Mike Zimmer. And Nick Foles, just so people understand, in a conference title game, 300-yard passing, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Here's who's done it. Matt Ryan, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, and now Nick Foles. Like, remarkable performance that I thought the Eagles could win. I didn't think they would, but I thought they could. Never like this. I never saw this way coming.
Here's my question. We saw what Nick Foles did the last 2 or 3 weeks. We know what the Eagles can do. How do you take a guy who you don't really have much confidence in that could be successful with downfield play calling, all of a sudden say, oh, in this game, I know the first play he was off, we're going to keep doing it, keep going. I know this is not what got you here and you haven't been successful. Today you're going to be successful. Like, who gives him the confidence, or who decides that you're just going to change things up and all of a sudden be successful against this defense?
From a play calling standpoint, when they put the game plan in, Nick has known all week that they were going to be very aggressive. Now, what you didn't know was how much time would he have to throw. Because on 2 of the long throws, not the flea flicker, 2 of the other long throws, he pumped the ball and was able to get more time in the pocket before he released it deep down the field. Now, that's not by design. You have a deeper route, but you don't know Nick Foles is going to reset and then launch the ball deep down the field. Typically, if he reset, he was going to hit a shorter guy, something a little more conservative. So that part of the game plan, it started with the installation, and that's where you have to be. Doug Peterson does a tremendous job game planning. Frank Wright does a tremendous job of coaching him up all week that we're going to be more aggressive than we've been with you all season, which led to confidence after a few completions.
And let's keep in mind, on that long touchdown pass to Alshon Jeffrey, Terrence Newman was in the game, not Xavier Rhodes. He was dealing with an injury, and so Terrence Newman thought the play was over because the time had elapsed, and Nick Foles shouldn't have that much time to be able to throw the ball. You saw Everson Griffin almost get to him, but Foles was able to step up, elude him.
And for Alshon Jeffries to get behind you, because he only like a half step faster than me. I'm talking about right now. Like, something would have to happen for him to get deep, because he's not known for his speed.
And CC, listen, I want to give you credit on something, because when I was never a buyer of Eagles stock, and then whatever stock I had bequeathed to me, I sold the moment Carson Wentz got hurt. And you kept saying, if they have the 1 seed, it's 2 games, both in Philly, like, you can't write them off. And I said, you can write them off, you can tear them up, you can throw them out. I've never been more wrong about a football thing than I was about the Eagles this year. But this number is jarring to me. And I didn't think it would apply because it was unseasonably warm yesterday. 13 times in NFL history, a dome team has gone on the road in a conference championship game to a non-dome environment. 13 times the dome teams had to play a conference championship game outdoors. Those teams are 0-13. So they've never won. Usually there's weather involved. Yesterday was a nice day in Philadelphia. Man, that crowd was loud. It was just a domination, really, from middle of first quarter on.
But the Vikings did things on offense that they don't typically do. They turned the football over, allowed a touchdown for a score. They hadn't done that all year long. So the fact that that happened, and the fact that Philadelphia was able to convert on 3rd downs, being 10 of 14 against a team that was historically good in the regular season on 3rd down in terms of the Vikings defense, that was the difference.
Offensive tackle and friend of the show, Lane Johnson, had some strong words for the Patriots after the Eagles' win last night. He had this to say about his Super Bowl opponent, quote, "Pretty boy Tom Brady, he's the best quarterback of all time, so nothing I'd like to do more than dethrone that guy." CC, your reaction to Lane Johnson's comments was?
I don't know why Lane trying to put himself in the news. Man, you're an offensive tackle. Like, you're not going to dethrone anybody. Like you're a defensive end or something. Like, leave Tom Brady alone.
That is a good point. He can't even compete against Brady.
He's just trying to be part of the news cycle. We're talking about Nick Foles. We're talking about their Eagles defense. We're not talking about Lane Johnson until now. Kind of strange.
It is, though. He said 3 sentences there. They were all complimentary. First one, pretty boy. Tom Brady is. And by the way, he has undergone a transformation from how he looked his rookie season to now. The second one was greatest of all time. He is. And the third one is dethrone. That, by definition, means he's sitting on the throne, the reigning king. So it was kind of the most gregarious trash talk one could have. But I understand.
Yeah. How'd that work out for Jacksonville?
Well, Jacksonville said we're going to win that bleep. That's a little different than, I think, what he said. He said we'd like to. Sir, if we may. More soup, please.
Leave Tom Brady alone.
Okay.
And finally, Rob Gronkowski left the game in the second quarter with a concussion. Barry Church was flagged for a 15-yard penalty on the play, but not everybody thinks it was a dirty hit. So Seahawks cornerback Richard Sherman tweeted this out. The hit on Gronk is the only way Church could have done his job without just obliterating Gronk's knee. If he would have just hit him low, most people would call him dirty. So there's nothing he can do to make everyone happy and do his job, unless you think he should let him catch. CC, you agree with Sherman?
Yeah, I'm not concerned about people. I got a job to do. I'm not concerned about people being happy with me doing my job. I don't critique them on their job and how they got to go about doing it. The safeties in the National Football League got a raw deal. When they changed the targeting rule, it's the worst position to play in the NFL because you cannot make split-second decisions when you're trying to run and hit a wide receiver, a tight end, a running back, and you're trying not to hit him in the head. Tom Brady led Gronk up the field, which made Gronk go off of his feet. And when he went off his feet to catch the ball, his head came down into Barry Church. Barry Church didn't lunge. You know, he didn't duck his head. Like, he could see the target, and he tried to hit him with his shoulder, but there was contact helmet to helmet. So I understand, and I don't listen to people who think that that was a dirty football play. That's a hard-hitting football play. Gronk got concussed on it. Those are parts of the game that, you know, that you don't like but are necessary.
For a long time, I thought this shouldn't be a flag because it was unintentional, because the safety did what he was trying to do the right thing, because the quarterback let him into him. CC has talked to me enough about this that because the NFL so desperately wants to remove these types of hits from the game, they would rather err on the side of you're penalized for an accident than err on the side of more of these types of hits. So I understand why this is a flag. And by the rules, it should be a flag.
Yes.
But it is not a dirty play.
No, look, he didn't even, if you look at he wasn't even going head first.
No, his first contact was shoulder to chest.
Right.
It's just, had he lowered his head, he puts himself at more risk. He did everything you're supposed to do, and there was incident
I would have
contact.
been more upset if he had gone after his knee.
Well, that's the point that I wanted to make, that I hope people can draw the distinction. Because going after his knee is legal, right?
Yeah, it's legal.
No 15 yards. Some
it's dirty.
legal plays are dirty, and some illegal plays are clean. Like, if that makes sense. That was not a cheap shot. It was not a dirty play. It was a football play that absolutely should have resulted in a flag. But Sherman's right. If he'd gone after his knees, that's legal, but that would upset Gronk more typically.
The more I listen to you guys both talk about this as we're on the 100th show, I feel like safety position is one of the hardest positions on the field, trying to play within the scope of the rules and trying to be good and be effective at the same time.
It's impossible, but you can't listen to people. The guy's he's got a job to do, and that's separate the wide receiver from the football. You don't know where Gronk's head's going to be. I mean, he was off the ground and came down into him. So Barry Church made a good football play. The penalty was called, and that was a huge play in the game.
And by the way, I do want to give credit to a group of people that don't typically get credit. The people running the NFL's concussion protocol, the unaffiliated neuro consultant on the sideline, they got a lot of flack, either fairly or unfairly, after the Carolina game. There's a lot of question about, will you pull a star player off the field in a playoff game? We saw the Chiefs lose their tight end in their playoff game when he clearly had a concussion. Gronk was wobbly. It was a key moment for the biggest brand in the NFL, and they said, no, you can't come back out there.
That's a good point. All right, the Eagles hosting the Vikings in the NFC title game. There was a day not long ago when most football folk were convinced Nick Foles couldn't beat the Vikings. That day was Friday. A lot has changed since then. Foles and those underdogged Eagles routed Minnesota 38-7 behind 350 yards and 3 touchdowns to advance to the Super Bowl for the first time in 13 years. Case Keenum came back to earth. He threw 2 picks, did lose a fumble. Here he is after the loss.
The guys we have in there is an incredible ride with those guys. It really was. And I can't put it into words because this is stinging too much right now. So, it's, but yeah, it was an incredible season. Just stinks that it has to end like this.
I love this football team. I love them. They're great kids, great competitors. I love how they go about their business. I love everything about this football team. I love the organization. We just didn't get it done tonight.
Here's the thing with Mike Zimmer. I totally believe him. I absolutely believe how much that team felt after that. So what went wrong for the Vikings yesterday, CC?
A couple of things. Philadelphia played a tremendous football game. Nick Foles played the best game of his career, but I think that after the Minneapolis Miracle, 7 days, Stephon Diggs, 61 yards, we saw the fans' reaction. We saw the players' reaction. And to me, the defense was still in a daze. It'd be easy for me to include the team and the offense, but the offense, their first drive, they drove 75 down and scored.
Yeah.
But the defense, this is probably the worst day since Mike Zimmer has been there defensively. Points, yards, all those things will be in the top as far as least productive. And to me, it's hard to recover. You mentioned what happened. Last Wednesday, it went unnoticed, but Mike Zimmer and people on the Vikings team talked about they didn't have a great practice on Wednesday. It was kind of hard to get the guys going after celebrating and everything. Eventually, they said they had a good day on Thursday and Friday, but I took note of that. What they experienced, none of those players had ever experienced before. I was there. I had never experienced it before. I didn't have to get ready for a game. Mentally, they were not ready to play this football game defensively, because this is the defense that we talked about. It was the best third down defense the last 15 years. But if you think that wasn't their Super Bowl, the Minneapolis Miracle, it proved out in the game. I was with the team before the game. They didn't have the same emotion. And that's hard to duplicate what they went through in a 7-day span. This defense played a lot like Everson Griffin is looking after the win over the Saints. Shocked. Wow, I can't believe it. And that's the way they played.
And if you remember, we had Adam Thielen on the show, either Thursday or Friday. I can't remember which day. And we started off to ask him.
The first 3 questions were about last week's game.
Yep.
And the reason why I laid out and didn't ask him any questions, because I knew as a player, I wouldn't want someone asking me that question. But we have to do our job.
And I specifically said, normally our guy Brum puts together a lot of our ideas for interview questions. I went to him before and I was like, no, we need to ask him as many questions as possible about that moment. And he said after the first one, he's like, I'll be honest, I wish we could be done talking about this. Like, there was that lingering effect. In the last decade, going into yesterday's game, 5 times a team had won a playoff game on a walk-off play. They'd been overtime wins typically. 5 times. Those teams going into yesterday's game were 0-5 with an average loss of 23 points.
To his point.
So there was some lingering effect. The other thing that happened to the Vikings yesterday, and I want to give the Eagles full credit. We're going to talk more about the Eagles specifically later in the show, I promise. But on the Vikings, all year long, you know how many defensive scores they allowed? 0. And they allow 1 early in this game. All year long, you know how many red zone turnovers they had? 0. And they allowed those they allowed those within a 20-minute window.
Yes.
They're up 7-0. They allow the pick 6. That pick doesn't kill them if it's not returned for a touchdown.
Yes.
It was a better return than it was actual interception. The interception part was easy. The return was spectacular. And then they're kind of recovering from it. Down 14-7 with the ball in the Philly 16, and they have a red zone turnover. They never did that, either of those things this year. They did them both in the first half of a conference title game.
All right, things went from bad to worse for the Cavaliers on Saturday. LeBron came into the game looking for his 30,000th career point and came out of the game looking for his 30,000th career point. Cavs lost to the Thunder 148-124. Behind only 18 from LeBron. Cavs have now lost 5 of their last 6, and LeBron didn't sugarcoat their recent performances.
We're not ready for playoffs. We can't even start thinking about that. Not the way we're playing right now. We can easily get bounced early in the playoffs if they started next weekend.
We got to really lock in on that end, really trust each other on that end. And I think that's the biggest thing on defense is trusting the next guy got your back. And then that guy who helps, trusting that next guy after that has your back. And I think on that end right now, we don't trust each other. And that has to change.
Are you concerned that something could happen with Ty?
I would hope not. I would hope not. I mean, but I really don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with our team.
All right, Nick, is LeBron James trying to get Ty Lue fired just based on what you heard there?
So if people couldn't quite hear the question was about Ty Lue's future.
Yes.
And LeBron said, I don't know. All right, so let me give a little context here for the audience. The day it was announced LeBron was going back to Cleveland, one of someone on LeBron's inner circle, I talked to him. He said, just so you know, I know David Blatt's the coach, in the next few weeks, they will hire Tyronn Lue. They will also hire me, not me, but the person who's talking to me. And eventually, Ty Lue's going to be the head coach because that's LeBron's guy. I didn't believe him for a second, but Ty Lue got hired. Then my buddy got hired.
The NBA the Cavs made him the highest paid assistant coach.
And then he became the head coach. Ty Lue does not get enough credit for being an above average NBA coach, but he got the job because he's LeBron's guy. So that's the context too. It would be shocking if LeBron wants him fired, but LeBron wants something drastic to happen with this team. It's, in my eyes, the only way to read his lethargic level of play the last couple weeks. Cece mentioned earlier, he could be allowing the MVP to slip out of his hands because Harden was injured, and it was a great chance for LeBron to jump over him. And I don't think LeBron's tired. I don't think LeBron's lost it in the last month. He is playing at a level almost to force the Cavs' hand, be it trade or coaching change. So I can't say he wants Ty Lue fired. I can't say he wants something drastic to happen.
Yeah, it's just so easy, and it's just so lazy as broadcasters and journalists just to say because LeBron answered the question. People asked him the question. And LeBron, he's not the general manager. He doesn't own the team. That's exactly what he should say. I don't know what's going to go on. I got a lot of things that I should be concerned about. And LeBron's not going to be right regardless of what he says. If he says, oh, yeah, Ty Lue's going to be around, you know what people are going to say? Oh, he's covering for his guy. So their play on the court is the most alarming. That should be what they should be concerned about. If they're concerned about the coach, there's no way they're going to upgrade if they fire Ty Lue. They will not get better by firing Ty Lue. Who are they going to hire?
Fizdale. That's the other reason this is interesting to me. A guy who was with LeBron in Miami, who LeBron really liked, who when he got fired in Memphis.
So you saying they're going to play better defense because they got another coach? Isaiah Thomas going to become a better individual defender? They got 4 bad individual defenders.
I didn't say they would play better defense, but you're asking me, because I do read more into these comments than you do, because you're right, LeBron's not the GM, but he absolutely could have said there. Listen, Ty won a championship with us less than 2 years ago. He's the head coach of this team. He's not the problem. And the Fizdale thing is what makes it interesting to me. That is because you asked me there's a specific name of a coach LeBron likes, who LeBron has experience with. Whether that would help or not, I don't know.
Good. It's also opens the door, Nick, for people to blame LeBron on what's going on in Cleveland. They're not a good defending team, all right? Kevin Love checked out this game sick. IT is not a good defender. JR was a good defender the last couple years. He's a horrible defender. So they got 4 bad defenders starting a basketball game. So it's not going to work. And if they don't make their threes, they're not going to be able to beat anybody. I told you over a week ago, they would have problems right now if they started the playoff. Forget Golden State. There's a couple teams in the East that would be able to beat them in a 7-game series.
Quickly, you said they'd have to do something drastic besides a coaching change. What else would be drastic?
A major trade. And by the way, Jay Crowder, who was brought in to be a good defender, had the worst defensive rating of anyone on the team in the game against Oklahoma City. A trade involving him. I mean, they say they might want George Hill. They might want DeAndre Jordan. A major trade if they don't do something with the coach.
I'm Jenna Wolfe, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.